Breaking news there from President Cyril Ramaphosa, talking, of course, about Ace Magashule, talking about changes in the ANC, wrapping up the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting. You saw that live here on Newsfeed. Well, let's get some analysis now and a view on it from our politics editor, Sbu Ngalwa. Sbu, good afternoon to you. Okay, I mean, it's really all about Ace Magashule, isn't it? He is suspended. Jesse Duarte takes over. And then he has to apologize for sending this letter in which he tried to suspend President Ramaphosa.
I think that they're trapping Ace Magashule, because he has been defiant. He has been saying that he is still the Secretary General of the ANC and that he is in his role. Now, by forcing him to apologize, I mean, obviously if he has to grovel, it will not reflect well on him, and especially given his bravado. But secondly, he may choose to do what the former President Jacob Zuma did when he was asked by the court to apologize to Derek Hanekom. I've been asked to apologize, therefore I apologize, and leave it at that. He may do that, but if he does not, he puts himself in a difficult position, because the optics of that are that of a leader who is defiant of the organization and its leadership and its decisions. And even though he may have some people who support him in the NEC, that puts them in a difficult position, because the whole issue of organizational discipline and integrity is at stake. So I think it was strategic of the ANC NEC not to outrightly take him to the disciplinary committee, but to give him an opportunity to apologize. Will he apologize? Given the attitude he has portrayed over the past few days, I do not think he will, but if he does not, he makes it very easy for them to go after him, Stephen.
It would seem to suggest that his sending of that letter last week then was already a big mistake. Now, of course, his opponents are going to capitalize on that mistake. Someone, passes the ball to the defender near the goal line, you're going to score a goal from there.
Exactly. He actually, I think it was a political blunder on his part, but it may also be an indication of the fact that he is out of options and he is desperate. And I think that part of it was also beyond that, just to create further confusion, which is the confusion that the NEC is talking about now, in terms of, we've seen those targeted leaks, and they were deliberate leaks, Stephen, I must say. We may have left them up as the media. I mean, it's not every day that you hear Thabo Mbeki speaking in an NEC meeting. So as the media, we will reflect that. But I think if we were to be honest, we do understand why the audio was leaked. It was leaked deliberately to create an impression that there is a tide that seeks, or that has engulfed President Ramaphosa, as though that there is a pushback against him. And I think strategically and from a propaganda point of view, it kind of works in terms of the psyche of the supporters of Ace Magashule and Jacob Zuma. Look what has happened since. You've had the grouping in KZN, some of those branches coming out in public support of Ace Magashule, and by extension, former President Zuma. Now, what will be happening tomorrow, strategically, which province? Northwest. There are some branches in Northwest tomorrow that will also take a similar line. There's a press conference that they've scheduled. Now, that tells you, Stephen, that there is a concerted approach, and also there is strategy in place, which is how do they now claw back some of the ground they have lost. Because the reality is, Ace Magashule's grouping has lost control of the ANC NEC, the NWC, and now we see that they also do not have control of the Women's League. So that also explains why you now have this call for a special conference. And you and I may ask ourselves, when we look, we did not think that this leadership would last until this long, but the reality is that it's only 17, 18 months before December 2022, when the ANC is due for its 55th Congress. What is the rush? And that tells you that perhaps it may be that the Magashule grouping has realized that they are out of options, that the only thing that may rescue them is a special conference.
Within all of this, there's also the issue around mobilization, because the President was very clear there, speaking on behalf of the NEC, as I understood it, that people who are suspended are not allowed to mobilize. They're not allowed to sort of gather support in any way. Ace Magashule gave an interview last week. We've also got Supra Mahumapelo, if I understand it. I mean, what are the implications there?
Look, obviously that will curtail cut his wings, Stephen, and actually if he does not abide by it, it further strengthens the case against him in terms of the lack of organizational discipline. Because remember, at the end of the day, this is not just a ordinary member or a branch chairperson from Kanduli. This is the Secretary General of the ANC, the top administrator of the party. So there is a certain level of behavior and standards to which he should be held. And also, if you are to compare him and look at other illustrious leaders who have held the position, so obviously the expectation of how he is to conduct himself is important. What does he do now? Well, we've seen what Suprema Homapelo has done now. He has now suddenly become a pastor that every Sunday he is addressing a church service. So we may well see Ace Magashule being invited to some churches, but what I think would be important, though, is he is actually, his back is against the wall. The ANC is saying he must not use their name, their structure, or even his office. So it will be interesting to see how he moves forward. I think his options are limited, and it's either now he takes a totally defined route where he says, that's it, I'm just going ahead on that trajectory. But what does that mean? If he's charged with misconduct and he's found guilty of that, he could well be expelled, which then curtails his chances of ever be leading in the ANC. But I think he'll have to think carefully about what he does going forward. But more importantly, though, Stephen, the president announces that 2,000 branches have already had their BBGMs, and now that's about half of the ANC's branches. Because if you look at the past two conferences, you'd know that they had just over 4,000 branches at those conferences. Now, what would be interesting, and what we should be doing as political reporters, is to drill down into those regions, into those sub-regions, to get a sense of which direction the wind is blowing, because we know it has happened before, where a president was in charge of the top structures of the party, but had lost the ground completely. Is Ramaphosa still in charge of the ANC, including the most basic unit of the ANC, which is the branch? That is the work that remains to be seen. As more branches have their BGMs, as more regions have their regional conferences, and as provinces have their provincial conferences. And the first one among those two will be the Mpumalanga, actually, this coming weekend, Stephen.
Very quickly, I'm fascinated by Kgalema Motlanthe, the former president, because suddenly he's chairing the electoral committee in the ANC. He's going to play a big role in deciding who represents the party. And now, on behalf of the National Working Committee, he's going to take over, it seems, a structure in the Free State. I mean, the bad news piles up for Magashule.
Look, I think Kgalema Motlanthe is generally considered to be someone who is above factional politics. Even at the time that he challenged President Jacob Zuma in 2012, it was clear even then that it was not about him being anti-Zuma or anything. He had actually couched his entire campaign around him being the nomination of branches, him honoring the call by the branches, but not that he was an enemy of anyone. So I guess in terms of acceptance, if there's one person who is to be accepted by all the factions in the ANC, it is one Kgalema Motlanthe. But I do think, though, that it was quite a blow for Ace Magashule, where the ANC, NEC is now saying that they support the efforts that Kgalema Motlanthe is leading in the Free State to unify the warring factions there. Now remember, there was that court action, that appeal that was launched by Ace Magashule and Sam Mashinini. The very appeal that was condemned by the provincial structure of the ANC in the province. So it looks like the SNC's Secretary General has his back firmly against the wall.
Is this then a big victory for Ramaphosa? I mean, we put all of the events of the last week together. I mean, it would seem like it, but obviously we know from previous history that you sometimes have to wait a little while to be sure.
As things stand, and by all accounts, Cyril Ramaphosa is in a comfortable position. He does control that NEC, he does control the NWC, and if you look at, in fact, the first time, the one time where we got that clearest indication was when he issued that letter where he said the ANC is accused, number one, and you had the entire NEC family behind him on that one. So as things stand, Stephen, in terms of the leadership structures of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa seems comfortable, but you and I know that at the end of the day, it boils down to the numbers. What are the regions saying? What are those sub-regions saying? What are those BGMs saying? Which is now the next work that is ahead of us as politics reporters.
Sbu Ngalwa, the political editor here, of course. Well, Sbu, thanks very much indeed, Sbu. I don't know if I'll try and get some sleep just yet. Maybe wait.